for his analysis on this brawl inside the coalition over religious discrimination and what to expect when Parliament officially resumes tomorrow for the year ahead. Let's bring in the national editor at the Australian newspaper, Dennis Shanahan, joining me now from Canberra. Dennis, thank you for your time. I'm not going to go all the way through the entrails of those text messages. We know what happened over the weekend, the apology from Barnaby Joyce, confirmation he offered to resign, the PM saying, I believe in forgiveness. Michael McCormack's still got the baton in his backpack, as the saying goes. The PM, though, wants everyone to move on. He wants colleagues to get back to work, get back to core business. I'm interested, what's the mood on the Hill at the moment, do you think?
Oh, look, as far as the National Party room is concerned and Barnaby Joyce is concerned, that didn't really amount to a hill of beans in the party room. There was Barnaby Joyce apologised and asked if anyone wanted to ask or do anything about it. It passed on. Look, I think that the text scandal, both leaks, have been overplayed, that their importance has been completely distorted in the media, taken advantage of by Bob Carr with a great trick, name a minister and then say, oh, well, if it's not him, get him to name the other one. It was a completely ludicrous attempt to try and pin Peter Dutton with something. But I think what we've actually seen out of that is this afternoon, the Prime Minister acting like a Prime Minister, taking steps to lift the restrictions on the international border, sending the ADF with Peter Dutton into aged care and making the point about the Ukraine and standing up for democracy on the global sphere. So, look, I think that what we saw at that press conference this afternoon was there were 2, maybe 3 references, that's all, to the texts, and the Prime Minister brushed them aside. Now, no doubt, in Parliament tomorrow, Anthony Albanese will be raising them. He'll take on the attack on aged care. But I think that what we've seen is an over-focus on the texts of both of them, 2 years old, when Barnaby Joyce was actually also on the backbench. And I think that press conference today has brought things back to reality. It's still bad news for the government. It's still bad for them. They look disrupted, and you've got rogues saying, I'm going to cross the floor on this or that. So, yes, it's still a problem, but I think that people will react and put things into a true perspective.
Look, I couldn't agree more, and I lament the modern media class for its lack of detail on issues that matter to real people and policy analysis. But I've got to ask you, Dennis, you've been in the gallery a long time. If that's your view and that's my view, then why last week did everyone in the gallery and the media fall for it? Why did they obsess so much about those text messages?
I have to defend some of my colleagues in the gallery. At that press club meeting with the Prime Minister, not everyone asked about texts and not everyone reported the Bob Carr spurious claims. So that hasn't been the case, but yes, there has been too much attention paid to a trifling tittle-tattle on texts and not enough attention being paid to the real concerns. And we know from the polling from last week, the people, the public, are most concerned about COVID, its health effects, and the economic recovery from the pandemic. And that's what we saw the Prime Minister trying to shift the debate back onto. Now, whether the media headlines follow him is another matter, but I think that there's been some fairly low standards of journalism applied, but then that's the way, that's the world we live in. It's a free press and everyone gets a go.
All right, well, let's go into some issues of substance. We know that the issue of religious freedom was a big commitment there from the Prime Minister. 2019 election, he said he'd mop up. In fact, earlier it was Malcolm Turnbull's commitment back at the time of the plebiscite in relation to same-sex marriage, but the Prime Minister was the one who was prepared to actually do something about the Turnbull promise. He's got an ongoing sore with a Tasmanian Liberal MP, first-termer, Bridget Archer. She was out there this morning saying she'll still cross the floor over this legislation. You've got this rump of modern Liberals who want protections for gay kids, but they don't want protections for Christians and Sikhs and Muslims and everybody else. The PM said today, there was a sense that it was shell, but the PM said today in their press conference, no, he's going to really move on with this legislation. Where do you think it's sitting?
Well, look, I think for a start, the religious freedom legislation is a mare's nest. Once Malcolm Turnbull committed, as he tried to balance off the referendum on same-sex marriage, he had then attempted to try and say, oh, we'll fix it all and we'll bring in this bill. It was never that easy. And there were some people who took the view there shouldn't be a bill at all, that we should just rely on the freedoms in the Constitution and freedom of religion rather than having to legislate. And of course, once the legislation came out, what we have seen is precisely what happened last week. Somebody at one school takes a particular point, it becomes a cause célèbre, a national issue. The Prime Minister then has to say, well, look, we might have to try and change it. And then somebody else says, oh, well, we don't like that change. And so really is a nest of changes, but once you pull one, the other one has to be balanced out. And I think what we've seen is over the years, particularly with the case of Tasmania's Bishop Porteous, the case I reported on initially, was that all he did to be drawn before the Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Board was send out Catholic teaching to the students' homes of Catholic students and parents. Now, what we've come to now, and Bishop Porteous is saying we need strong protections. He knows. He went through a 3-year saga, being dragged through the anti-discrimination mill. And what we now see is an attempt to try and put all of these particular issues into legislation. It is extremely difficult, and I think that Scott Morrison will put it up. He'll try and keep his promise, and then he'll say, if need be, well, I was defeated by my own backbench or failed to be supported by Labor. And so he'll make the best of a political loss if he does indeed have a loss on religious freedom.
All right, just before we go, this blanket ban on new coal, oil and gas, that's the price the Greens say that they will demand from Labor in the event of a hung parliament. Adam Bandt says you've got to stop pouring petrol on the fire if you want to put it out. He's painting a very clear picture of what minority government would look like if it came to a hung parliament, as I said. Do you think the public are actually tuned into what the Greens might look like in government again?
Look, I think that this is a major problem for Anthony Albanese. I think that this is a real issue for Labor because the Greens are using the opportunity to say we'll be able to influence government, a minority government from the crossbenches, so you can vote for us. We don't have to form government, but then we can do all sorts of things on climate change, like blanket bans on gas and coal. While at the same time, Anthony Albanese has to say, no deals, we're going to have a majority government. But the danger is, and we saw with Labor's amazing backflip on the Kurri Kurri gas power plant, that they are feeling the pressure in the Hunter Valley, in the seats of Hunter and Patterson, and so they've had to change. The government's now approved that. But at the same time, Adam Bandt is promoting the Greens on the back of Labor and forming a challenge to Anthony Albanese, who keeps saying, no deals, but he can't get away from the fact that everyone says, well, hold on, if you're one seat short of a majority government, will you accept the Greens vote? That's his problem, and it is a major problem for Labor in the regions and particularly in Queensland.
No carbon tax, another government I lead. I remember that one well in 2010. Dennis Shanahan, as always, thank you for your time.